This episode of Simulation Nation is brought to you by Avkin, your one-stop shop for everything wearable simulator and standardized patients.
All right. Welcome back. This is Amy Cowperthwait and Megan Weldon. We are here with another episode of Simulation Nation. And today we are going to be talking about all things continuing education as far as it relates to the Simulationist.
Yeah, how'd that feel? That was your first intro.
I think I did all right.
Yeah,
Did I do all right?
I think you sounded beautiful.
That was good. Yeah, no, I'm just saying, it's just a different vibe. Being on this side of it, listening to the intro, you know.
Did I have enough pep in my step?
Yeah, I think it was great.
All right,
It was great. It's just a
fantastic.
very different, kind of like, I don't know.
You jealous?
No,
You were
no.
good?
I think just like watching the game versus being in the game. I don't know. Just felt different.
Okay. All right. Felt different doing it too.
Okay,
but
great.
I got this.
Woohoo!
All right. So today we're going to be talking about continuing education and just the different opportunities. And I think as it relates specifically in simulation, because simulation is a really highly interprofessional or interdisciplinary, there are so many different people that are getting involved with it. And within the healthcare community. And I just wanted to take a moment to kind of discuss the different options because a couple of episodes ago we talked about certification. And one of the parts of certification is to have continuing education hours. And most of us within our disciplines have to have continuing education hours as well. So as simulationists and working in this multidisciplinary industry, I think it's really important for us to spend a few minutes talking about it and mostly honing in on the opportunity for hosting continuing education at your site, but also just the different opportunities that they have to gain continuing education hours in simulation education. I think the kind of lowest hanging fruit or the potentially the most affordable is going on to Healthy Sim and doing some of the Healthy Sim webinars, that we're a part of as far as from the educational perspective, but also there are a ton. He has a whole library of continuing education opportunities.
And just be aware that they're not all continuing education, so they do have to say on there if they are offering them or not. So just be aware of that.
Yes. So Healthy Sim has that. Also, typically, some of the journals, some of the different professions journals will have continuing education opportunities where you take a small exam, submit it. It's something that is done online. There are a lot of regional simulation programs in the country, in the United States. I assume it's international as well, but they will also host it. Typically when it's a regional one, it will be a 1 or 2 day event typically, and it's focused specifically on simulation education. It's open to all different disciplines to attend, and the idea behind that is that you don't have to be able to have huge budget to travel to San Diego or
Orlando.
Where was the one that we just went to for an Axel?
And Axel was
New
in
Haven.
Providence,
Rhode Island. So, I know myself, I had $500 every year to travel or to do professional development. That was all of my budget. I hope that it's gone up since that time. And I hope that not everybody listening has such a small budget. But you do have to figure out how to make those dollars stretch.
Yeah.
So,
or for those people who have $0 budget for their
that could be very true as well. But the idea of having these regional sim conferences, there's ways to do this, where you could actually bring maybe a little bit of revenue in to your sim center, but also that you're hosting it, but then you're also finding ways to get that continuing education. And support it. So,
and I do want to say that those regional simulation groups, oftentimes they are nursing focused or nursing led. If you are in that area doing simulation and you want to plug in, I'd encourage you to get involved. Reach out to the leaders, let them know that if you're in a different profession, you're doing simulation, you want to learn more, you want to get involved, what it is. Because I've seen some of them grow, where they started in nursing and then they turned interprofessional because people were involved. I think sometimes we don't realize, again, like we put our heads down, we don't realize. But having the, forethought to reach out and, again, get involved in what's going on, I think that sometimes there can be opportunity to expand those regional simulation groups as well.
Yeah. And one thing that we have done is created a platform to have a very affordable, pretty much covering lunch and meals and a little bit of our travel, to do regional workshops. We call them Sim Summits. And I think that the purpose or the motivation behind that for me personally was that when I was a simulationist and had such a small budget, I traveled, and I'm going to give HPSN a shout out. So CAE's HPSN conference, it was always in Tampa, Florida, but I was on the East Coast, so it was a little bit more affordable. But I could get a flight down affordably and pay for the hotel, and then there was just a small fee to get in, and they had really good presenters. Now, it wasn't all CE created, but it was a continuing education opportunity, right? So you know, those contact hours or continuing education units, if it's required, that's a little bit more of a challenge for some place where it's a sponsorship. Now, what we do with our Sim Summits is typically the hosting institution has the ability to apply for CE credits. Anything that's obviously Avkin centric or wearable simulators is not considered part of the continuing education.
Well, we do have, when we go through it, we go through hybrid simulation. So when we're talking about it, we are not, it's not
like
a
the
commercial.
demo wouldn't be considered that. But anyway, I think the last thing that obviously if you have budget is to do one of the national or international conferences that's offered. You know, even if you go to a discipline specific conference like National League for Nurses, there's still plenty of, you know, teaching and learning sessions on simulation. But you do want to check the agenda ahead of time, make sure that you are going someplace that is going to, you know, fill your need and help you with what you need as far as the next growth opportunity within your professional career.
Yeah, and those major conferences, you're able to get through a lot of your professional development just with that. When you're reapplying for your CHESI and things like that, you can get a lot of contact hours quickly. I think that if you're trying to do it, you know, with the regional, it's just going to take more time. It just takes more effort. But again, it's time or it's money, one or the other for your professional development.
Yeah. So one of the things you could do is plan on hosting an event. And I think there's so many opportunities to, if you don't have a regional simulation program, or even if you do, getting everyone together, just networking. I know I was a part of the 2015 National League for Nurses Simulation Leadership Group, and that group of 20 individuals, yes, we had facilitators like Pam Jeffries and Marianne Rislow, which was just amazing, right? But it was us getting together and going, wow, we do know a lot more than what we thought we did. Because when you work in, especially at that time, maybe not as much now, but we didn't have anybody to compare ourselves to within our own universities. And we didn't have anybody to say, hey, I'm thinking this, what do you think? It was just such a validating experience to me. So being able to get together and being honest and being real, telling people what your struggles are, telling people what your challenges are, and that's the way we were. I showed up and I had been on a plane all night and gotten transported at 6 a.m. from, I think it was Houston to San Antonio, and had mustard on my shirt, and we were real. You know, we were just willing to be vulnerable. And I think sometimes that networking opportunity, I know when we did our Sim Summit at Sam Houston, that was so cool because everybody was willing to share what their struggles were. And then there were people that had that struggle and had a solution. So it's not just about the people that are presenting, but it's also about that networking opportunity.
And I think seeing the trends in the area, if there's a grant that's come into the state and how people are planning on using it, how people are applying for it, if you want to go through accreditation with SSH, things like that, but being able to kind of have these common themes that typically are happening regionally, that's another huge benefit of being able to get together and talk about it.
Yeah, and then I think the idea of, you know, with that networking and people being real is, you know, you can learn the different areas of expertise that different programs have, or, you know, what they have done that works for them. So it's kind of like giving you a shortcut to success for different types of events or simulations that you're doing. sharing of resources. I think, again, we've said it several times, but simulationists are probably the most giving profession.
Simulationists support simulationists.
Yes, 100%. Isn't that what our sign says?
Yes, that is what our sign says.
But I think that it's just such a, again, the way that they share is so valuable. And I think that that's one of the things that I always walked away with, was that wherever I went, I had a new creative idea or a way to do something that was easier than what I had done before. Or I think just a great storage tip or whatever it was.
I think that so much of that too comes from the leaders of simulation, the ones who started it, the people who pioneered simulation. They were the ones who shared. They were the ones who gave openly.
Yep.
They were the ones who were approachable. So when you think of Kim Leeton and Susie Cardin-Egren and people like that, they are the ones who I think set that stage so that the rest of the community was going forward with that same mentality of giving, sharing, offering resources, because at that time there wasn't anything. We were all just trying to figure it out. So if this can help you, then sure. But I just love that that's continued on throughout the years, that there is still this undertone and I think just culture built into simulation of a community that shares and gives and doesn't try to hide stuff from one another.
Yeah. And I think the other piece of hosting an event is that you are giving back to the simulation community. It's work. I'm not going to lie. It's work, and it's going to take time. But if you think about the benefit of being able to give back to the sim community, your leadership may be really excited about the opportunity of inviting other people from the community in to see it. Yeah. Yep. And so I think giving back is a great, a great motivator to push past some of the extra work that you might be doing on weekends or nights. I know that it can be a little daunting of where you're going to place everything. You typically have to do an event in a non-busy time during the semester for your own sanity.
Yes.
But also for the spaces, right? Wherever you're going to be doing it. So if you are doing it in an academic setting, how do you plan that? Well, if you plan it, when the semester is out and you invite people in, there's better parking.
Yeah.
And you do have some, breakout spaces and things like that. Or maybe you have a huge sim center and you could, have smaller classrooms in different places.
The lucky ones.
Yeah,
the
few lucky ones. Yeah. And I think when you have it at your place, you kind of get to pick the agenda too. So what are the topics that you're gonna
what's timely? What do I want to hear about?
Yeah. So like when escape rooms are hot, you can have that conversation and learn how to maybe have people in that have done the escape room speak, and then they can give you advice on how to do it. So it can be things that you want to do, or you can share what you're doing. And again, that goes into the SSH accreditation of you're not just now consuming the information, but that you're also sharing what you're doing. And I think some people are hesitant to present because they think that they have to have done a high-level research project before they can present on the things that they're doing.
Or they're nervous. I think public speaking, when you're just getting started in public speaking, is terrifying. I think that you're so concerned that you're going to say the wrong thing. You're going to trip all over your words. And then all of a sudden, it feels like everyone's going to stare at you. And I never realized this until when we were going out and doing presentations. And no one ever wanted to do suctioning. Whenever we'd say, does anyone want to come suction the patient, try it out? You could have a group of 50 people, all very excited. But no one wanted to be that one to go up in front of everybody, because I remember hearing someone say that they were scared that if they made a mistake, all of their colleagues were there to see them make that mistake. And what was that going to look like if they were competent? Would they think that they're still a competent educator, nurse, whatever that may be? And I think that it's just that risk of putting yourself out there, that there's just such a fear of, well, what if? What if I get up there?
So I have a really funny story behind that one. I was just going to say, I've never been afraid of public speaking, but that is a flat out lie.
Yes, I remember. Okay, yeah, if you would have said that, I would have called you out on that, because I distinctly remember. Let me tell the first part of the story. When you were going to do your keynote for an Axel, that's where you're going, right?
Yeah, the Hayden Vanguard Award.
I won. The behind the scenes of this, and I think this is the funny part of being your daughter, and we shared a hotel room, so like I saw the behind the scenes.
Oh no, don't tell that.
I'm telling this story. So you were so nervous. She packed I think 12 pairs of shoes. We were there
I'm
for
a shoe
3 days.
person.
3 days. I think she packed 12 pairs of shoes. When she opened her suitcase, she just kept pulling out shoes.
I had to go get an
And I
outfit
said-
for the speaking event because I didn't have enough outfits for
But
the
she had
conference.
12 pairs of shoes. And I said, what did you think when you put all this in? And you said, Megan, I blacked out. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's going on. We'll figure it out on the back end. And I just was like, okay. And then after the shoes came out, that's when the bags started coming out. And she said,
Not
to keep me-
purses, just
Yeah,
like
not-
little bags, little
like-
organizer bags.
Yeah, not like Ziploc
Oh my
bags,
gosh.
but not purses, but just like those little organizer bags. And she was like, "This is how I'm going to keep myself organized."
I'm
And
not a
inside
very organized person.
And inside the bags was another bag with another bag and another bag. And she kept losing everything. She kept being like, "Oh, I thought it was in this bag, but it's in this bag." And she couldn't find anything that she needed because all she brought for the entire time we were at an Axel in 2017 was shoes and organizing bags. And that was it. And we had to go out and get an outfit because you didn't have an outfit for the keynote presentation.
Yeah.
Share your side of it.
Well, so my more professional side of it was
That's a behind the scenes peek there.
that I remember being really nervous about it in the beginning, and Susie Cardung Edgren said, "Just share your story. We just want you to share your story." And I was like, "Okay, I can do that." And so I, obviously prepared the education and planning table for it. I spent months on the PowerPoint presentation because telling your story is easy, but you want to make sure that
It makes sense. It
right,
flows.
it
You
flows,
understand it. Yeah.
and it, the whole idea was that they awarded the Hayden Vanguard Award because you were making a difference in simulation education. So highlighting that part of it, right? And I'll never forget that because I was the Hayden Vanguard Award winner, I was invited to this kind of wine and cheese in the president's room.
The president's room. Okay.
And Susie was there. And the Hayden Vanguard Award, I think it's presented earlier at an Axel, but at the time it was the end note speech.
I think it's still the end note speech. I could be wrong, but I think it's later.
Well, irregardless, for me,
It was the last day.
it was the last day, and it was so the whole event was nerve-wracking.
She made all of us stay a day later because she was worried there would be no one in the audience.
Yeah,
And so she
I
wanted to
was.
ensure that
And
there
I-
was at least a handful of people
And
in
I
the
asked
audience.
all my Sim sisters.
Yeah, please stay
Please
because
stay.
she was so worried that no one was going to even
Yeah,
be there.
I did. But when I talked to Susie, she's like, "Well, make sure you don't forget to say this and this and this." And I had like literally scripted every one of those out, right? And so again, I don't want to spend a lot of time belaboring it, but I end up in the middle of an Axel changing my presentation to make sure I
you
fit
really
everything
kind
in
of
it.
though got thrown in the deep end with that one. I will say, in terms of just us talking about public speaking and things like that, I think you really went from very little public speaking opportunities to now giving an end note speech at an Axel.
Yeah, and more people showed up. That was the good news.
There was a lot of people there.
Yeah.
I remember it was a packed house. I remember
Yes.
there weren't seats.
I was shocked.
I remember
Literally
we
shocked.
couldn't get seats because it was a packed house.
Literally shocked.
And we still have people come up and talk about that speech, that they were there and they remember it and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I think that, again, yours is obviously a very rare situation. But I think being able to go and do it for the first time, it's scary. But again, I think that saying that's very common is, do it scared. Just go forward, do it. It gets easier with time, but definitely the first few times you do it, I think, and it's helpful to know though that everybody feels that way. I think that's what's helpful to know is that everybody feels like they're going to stumble over their words or they're going to missay something. That's so common and normal, and again, that's life.
But
I was just going to say, coming from like radio end, if you ask somebody how many times they've messed up, it's way more than they can count.
Yeah.
Like it's every day.
Yeah.
So public speaking is the same exact way. You stumble, everybody's going to stumble.
Yeah.
It's how you get back up.
Yeah. And just I think addressing it if it does happen, I think that's just the easier way to kind of tuck and roll out of the situation, Just nah. Well.
I mean, again, I think we've gotten more comfortable with being real.
Oh, yeah.
And presenting and starting off and speaking to, I don't know how many, was it 1,000,
I don't
2,000
know.
people? I don't know. But
The Super Bowl, whatever.
But I think it is better in region to start off at a regional conference and speaking to like 20 or 30 people and people that are, you know, familiar, all like-minded and familiar, right? Yeah, I think absolutely. And if you're nervous to do it all by yourself, get a couple other people, do a panel presentation, something like that.
Yeah.
And then the last thing that I would say as far as a benefit is getting your sim center on the map. So just having people aware, you know, we've talked a lot about visiting different sim centers and the things that we think are really cool and the things that we would like to make changes. Like, have people come in and say, oh, you could do this or that, or I love how you did this or that. Because there are not 10 different sim centers within your institution, there's only one probably. You have no way to measure yourself against people or to make sure that you're doing good sim or whatever it is. So, I mean, obviously we have the standards of best practice, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think that a big thing with that I thought of when you were saying that is it's not only just that people can give you advice, but all of a sudden you can give other people advice. And I think that until you have people in, you don't realize the cool things that you're doing.
No.
I don't think Sarah Pierce at California Baptist, who does all of this stuff with theater, I don't think she realizes how unique and cool it is. Elena Harrington, she did everything from figuring out the dollar amount of a simulation. The cent amount. Figuring out how much a mannequin costs and dividing that, how many user hours she had, plus all of the disposables. That is incredible. And I think until you are talking to others and, again, bringing people in, you don't realize your unique strengths that you have. And so to be able to host people, it does get your simulation center on the map, gets you on the map, and I think it boosts your own confidence to be like, oh, this is really cool what I'm doing. And again, being able to kind of, you know, receive information, which is always valuable and always important, but also being able to give some insight. And I think that until you actually have that experience, you just don't realize what you're doing and how unique it is.
Well, or just that you do offer a lot into the simulation community.
Yes,
you know?
Yeah, and your ideas are, you know, unique and all of that.
Yeah, I definitely think so. But there's definitely some considerations.
I think as soon as you said hosting a live event, I was like, we just lost everybody listening because they said absolutely not. They said, thanks, no thanks. I'm going somewhere else. I don't need this in my life. I don't need to hear about this. So I think that hosting an event always feels super intimidating when getting started, but there's really only a few pieces that you need that are going to be your fundamental pieces to know if you have the right space to be able to do this. Like, can you actually pull it off? And one of those is space. You need to be able to have the space to host people. It depends on how big. It can be as small as 20, but it can go up to 100 people, right? So setting that limit on how many people are going to come in, but do you have the classroom space to be able to host it? Some people do it in their sim labs where they actually have tables and chairs and they can, you know, make it a classroom setting. It's set up for that. I know at our university that would have not happened. Like, we didn't, our sim labs were not set up that way. That wouldn't have worked. We would have had to find an event space to be able to do it. And, you know, that can be challenging to be able to get that reserved. You have to do it ahead of time. You got to talk to the right people. And, you know, it's not necessarily the thing we do every day, but a lot of places do have either just small board rooms where, again, you can host 20 people, and then there's also the opportunities to be able to host, you know, 50 to 100 people. It's just making sure that you have that. It does not need to be a beautiful space. It needs to, you know, have AV. You need to be able to have a projector screen, you know, all that, be able to show presentations. But it does not need to be anything grand, but you just need to make sure you have the actual space that can host it. The next thing is just thinking about timing. I think in simulation, whenever you go into it, your life is now completely changed in how you view seasons and time and everything, because you've got your high times, you got your low times, and pretty much everything. I think everyone knows who has a family. It's like, hey, it's the middle of sim. It's crazy. Get back to you at spring break. You know, that's just the way life works.
You're in academia, for sure.
That's just how life changes, right? So I think being able to look at it in terms of when's the appropriate time to bring people in. You want to consider holidays. You want to consider, you know, the low times. And then you want to consider not doing it when everyone's at maximum stress, you know, when they're not going to be able to take a day away to come and do an event. So trying to find that sweet spot there, you know, when sim is starting to slow down, but people aren't necessarily out of office yet. That's always kind of that sweet spot. And again, it depends on your region of what you're looking at for what that's going to look like. But just trying to find the best date, time. Usually Fridays are the best for being able to do an event. Monday, everybody forgets. just if you do an event on Monday,
or just get
get busy, and then on Monday it's that's not possible to get out and do something different. And then usually middle of the week is just a little bit harder in terms of clinical, all of the other things that
getting
are
away.
happening. Yeah. And then the next piece is just cost. Thinking about what cost is going to look like. Do you have budget for this? Is this something that your institution is willing to put some money towards, be able to help with? If not, there are absolutely reasonable, affordable ways to get this done. It's just that you need to know what you're working with. So considering lunches, considering food cost, can you bring in outside food? A lot of places you can't. So then you have to work with your catering team to be able to do that. Some places don't offer lunch, which makes it a whole lot easier, but just considering what is that going to look like, and then just kind of make a line item. Just kind of go through and do line items for each cost that you could incur for the event.
Yeah, and I think if you have like a regional meeting, if it's, every 2 months or every month or whatever, you could just extend that time. So instead of it being a meeting for maybe an hour and a half, you're doing a 3-hour meeting or a 4-hour meeting. Anything longer than that, you need to probably be thinking about some food and
break.
drink.
Letting people get out.
But I think you don't have to necessarily have a whole day event like a Sim Summit would be, but you can have a good 4-hour event that is
Bring
targeted
in a guest speaker.
out. Yep. And I would say that guest speakers consider it a privilege and an honor to be asked to speak, even if they have to do it virtually because you can't afford to fly them down. It is something that they need, especially if they're academic motivated, and it does help with their SSH certification if that's something that they need. So, again, I think don't hesitate to think about that. But one thing about cost that I don't think you mentioned yet is if you need to collect the money, how do you do that?
Oh yeah.
So I learned this the hard way at where I worked, but there's one book accounts and two book accounts. One book accounts is money just goes into the account through the university. Two book account is that the money can come in from other sources. So you have to figure that out, and your dean or director, or maybe there's a financial person, I don't know, but you do need to be thinking about how you would be doing collection of money, especially if it is like something that's a catered event that's required. So again, you don't have to start there, but it is something to be thinking about as far as how that money would be collected, or would it be done through the regional simulation?
Yeah.
If it's
being able to collect
sophisticated enough, they might be able to do the charging of it or something like that.
Yeah, and just consider again, how is it going to be by check? How is that all going to work? Your dean is going to ask you these questions when you come and discuss this, so just thinking through some of those options, and maybe asking some other people who have hosted events how they've done it. I think that that's also really beneficial to learn how other people have approached it. And then the last piece is just thinking about agenda. I think that's the hardest piece to come up with, is just who's going to be the speakers, how's the agenda of the event going to flow. But it's kind of a blessing and a curse. You can kind of look at it as glass half full, where you get to select the topics, you get to select what you're talking about, you get to know what's timely, and then the other side of it is now you got to work through what exactly that's going to look like. My recommendation is shoot for the stars, go all out, see what's possible, because sometimes you can do more than what you thought you could. Sometimes people are already going to be in the area wanting to come, and they can stop by for the day and do an additional speaking engagement that's reasonably cost effective and things like that. But being able to just try to work through what that agenda is going to look like, I'd say go all out and then pare back where needed.
Yeah. And, again, don't forget to include yourself. It'll give you a good opportunity to get started.
Even if you're scared to speak, include yourself.
Yep. There's ways to do that for sure. So the $1 million question is funding. So you talked a little bit about charging people, but there's other ways to get funding as well.
Yeah, or potentially talking to your dean. But I think that it just depends on if your institution has budget to be able to pay for these types of things. I think that just depends. But that's where I would start. That would be kind of my first move is, here at our institution, do we have money for this? Go through the benefits, go through, the positives, and then kind of work through, this is the logistics of it all. This is how we can make this work. This is what the cost is going to be. You can consider doing ticket cost, which will offset, any kind of lunches or things like that if you want to include that. Don't feel like you have to. Being able to do an hour and a half break for lunch and people just go out and get lunch is also perfectly reasonable. So just think through what actually that would look like, and then again, considering ticket costs with that, a small amount can just cover, the basics that are needed. There's also opportunities to work for, there's a lot of state funding that goes in. So when we did our Sim Summit at CM Houston, they had a Texas grant that had come in about doing more with nursing professional development. And so they received the grant. They paid us to come in and basically put on the full event. So that was something that was really great because they didn't have to be super involved in the logistics and things. And the grant really was the one that paid for the majority of it. But they were able to have about 50 people come in, 2.5 days of presentations. And again, a lot of really good content and networking opportunities to be able to do that.
Yeah, and we intentionally put a lot of hands-on material in there, so it wasn't just sitting in front of a PowerPoint, but that we were doing some demonstrations and activities and things along those lines. There's also, think about like local nursing groups. So one of the things that's one of our upcoming Sim Summits is up in Connecticut, and so the National League for Nurses in Connecticut has budget to help support some professional development. So do you have, I know in Boise, in Idaho, they have a pretty strong NLN group too. So there, within your different area, you might have a strong, Association of Nurses for Professional Development group, or National League for Nurses, or whatever the case may be. But be thinking about approaching them to help with a supplement for this opportunity, because again, they have budget for it, so it's a line item already, and they're looking for opportunities to make the most of that money and benefit a broad community within there.
And don't be afraid to be the one to volunteer. I think that a lot of times they're looking for hosts or looking for people to volunteer, and I think that it just feels overwhelming and, again, a little scary to have everybody come in. But again, take that chance, go out, do it. You don't have to have a beautiful sim center. It doesn't have to be the most state-of-the-art, all this stuff. I think just being able to be willing to have people come in and host them really, again, is going to offer a lot of opportunity just for networking and then expanding your own reach in simulation.
Yep, and I think the one thing that I would really like to talk about just a little bit, because I've been on both sides of this, is you could also invite vendors, and those vendors will sponsor certain things. So you might be able to get, 2 sponsors that would pay for the lunch or something along those lines. So be good to your vendors if you do support, if you do ask them to come and help to support. If you're offering continuing education hours, you can't have them in the exact same room as the event itself, but you can have them outside in a hallway as people are walking in and out. They would be able to interact with the vendors, have some of the food in that area, so that again, the vendors have an opportunity to interact. It's not just they're not just there to pay for the event or to sponsor the event, but they're also there to, have an opportunity to speak with people that are in the simulation community. So we had an event where we were, placed in an area that was in a separate building. And I don't think that that's very conducive to building vendor relationships. So just be thinking about this on a more solid perspective of, these people are really hoping for an opportunity themselves, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be a hard sales pitch. It just means that they want an opportunity to interact with the people that they are sponsoring.
Something that IMSH does that I think is phenomenal, I absolutely love the way they approach it. They always look at vendors as, this is the newest technology of what's going on in simulation. So they don't view it as, oh, here's the people who are paying for it, so just go talk to them because they're like paying for your food. They approach it as, this is another opportunity for you to go further in simulation, to learn about what's new, to learn about what's happening, to further your sim program. And that's something that I really appreciate about how they approach it, because it's true. These aren't just, most of the time, people in simulation who are vendors are not there just to make a buck. They're there to really further simulation. And a lot of people, like, companies like iSimulate, companies like LifeCast, they were started by people who had clinical background, who did some simulation, and then found this need and have gone forward with companies. I mean, again, Avkin is, the brainchild of that, of coming from a simulationist who just wanted to make it better. And the goal is not just to do a hard sell, but it is just to say, here's some opportunities. Are you interested? And I think that that's something that often gets missed, is it's kind of like, oh, let's put them in the corner, thank them for paying for everything. Okay, let's move on to the real content. But approaching it and kind of switching that mindset of, this is new technology, this is new ways of doing simulation. Let's all make sure we are well equipped of the knowledge of knowing what's out there and what's possible as we go forward to make decisions. And I think I just always really liked how they've approached it.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. And I think that it is so important that we are not just keeping our heads in the sand and doing the same thing that we've always done, because if we did that as a society, we would all fail, right?
Well, and simulation has grown so much.
Yeah.
So much. 5 years, 10 years. It's insane to look at where we were 10 years ago. So just being able to keep up with what's going on, I think, again, it's just, that's part of our own responsibility of knowing what's going on and what's out there to keep up with it.
And the other thing that I would say that IMSH does is they get feedback from the different vendors at at the conference, and that helps them do better for the next time. And so I think just going and sending the vendors that supported you, handing them a small note of thanks and saying, at the end, sending them an email or something at the end and just saying, what did you like? What are some of the things? Because, again, they have a different perspective than you do.
Sending them a thing of asking, what would make you want to exhibit in the future? Again, I think that's a huge benefit. Yeah. We'll step off our soapbox, though, now, because I feel like we've really gotten off track here with talking about vendors.
It's not off track. I've been on both sides, and I just want to share.
We'll step off the soapbox now. We'll move on.
Just want to share both perspectives, that's all. So I think one of the big things that, you don't have to do this alone. I think if there's a message out there, if you have a regional simulation program, they may be willing to partner with you. It's just you
and they have done
stepping
it
out
so
and
many
saying
times.
you're interested. Hopefully they've done it. But your leadership may also be really interested in being involved in helping out. Maybe normally you have to rent classroom space, but maybe there's a classroom that is dedicated to your specific discipline, and that could be offered at an off time or something like that. So talk to your leadership, see what the opportunities are. Go to them with a proposal. It's easier if you go with a proposal than just an idea. Contact your marketing department. Help them get the word out.
If you have a marketing department, your marketing department has done this countless times. They are familiar with it. They know what they need to do. So we record these ahead of time, but we will be doing a Sim Summit at George Washington right before this episode is actually released. And we've worked so closely with their marketing team. Again, we're getting on calls with them. They're being helpful in just terms of, hey, this is how our institution works. These are some of the things that, we go through. Here's some of the considerations. And just being able to have someone who, again, does this on a regular basis is so helpful, because they're the ones that know how to contact, local media. They're the ones who know how to get the word out about what's going on, and then just be able to help from a logistics standpoint with food and beverage and all of that.
And they will make your sim center look amazing.
Oh yeah.
So and if you have a marketing team, contact them and let them reach out. Like you don't. I again, being a nurse, I didn't think about contacting the marketing department, but when we had partnered with the theater program, that was one of the first contacts that they made.
Yeah.
So it's so helpful, and again, it's not necessarily my first inclination, but I think it's really important to say is that they can be a huge help to you to get the word out.
Even if you are not hosting an event, contact your marketing department. If you haven't contacted your marketing department.
What are you going to say to them, Megan?
I need some good content, and we've got some really cool stuff going on here.
Okay.
Come and check it out. But even for them to just be able to come, write blogs, take photos, take video, it helps them because they're pushing what's going on at your institution. They're able to highlight it. It's a great story to talk about healthcare and all of the positive impacts. They can interview a few students, but it gives you so much stuff. So if you're wanting to create a website, if you're wanting to create blog posts, if you're wanting to put information out there, they can help you. You don't have to take it with iPhones and just take pictures and be like, we're good. They can come and give you that content. And I think that was one of the biggest benefits we had at the university, was how many articles we had written, how many photographs we had, because it just makes you look more of like a professional place, a professional institution.
And that's how we found some of our hospital partners.
Oh, yeah. With being able to, beef it up a little bit.
Yeah. And then if they don't have a marketing team, to contact local media, don't be afraid to contact local media. Contact the newspapers, contact radio. They want to talk to you. They're always
looking for the story.
They're looking for something, and this is it's timely in it. And again, healthcare impacts every single person on this planet. So don't be afraid to contact them. Let them know that you're doing some really cool things. Have them come down. do a piece on what you're doing. I know that when we released the Birth, we did a big thing, and it actually ended up hitting national news.
Yeah.
So,
because again, everyone's impacted by this. So I think a lot of times you look at it and you're like, well, what I do every day is not interesting. But then you explain it to somebody else of healthcare simulation and this technology that's involved. And again, if you have actors that are coming in and things like that, the story writes itself. You just need them to, be aware that that's what's going on.
Yeah, for sure.
And so some of the other options are not always just run through and do presentation days. There's a lot of other options. So if you didn't want to start with, a full conference, right? A full day conference, doing half day presentations. We've talked about having kind of a guest speaker come in, do a hands-on sim day. I heard about this and thought this was the coolest idea, but inviting other simulation centers to come in, work with the technology. They ran like some mock simulations, things along those lines, but just having everyone involved, getting hands-on. Moulage. Everyone was just learning from one another. And I just thought that was such a cool idea. Obviously, there's a lot of logistics that go into it, but just being able to have everyone kind of work together in the sense and learn from each other with debriefing styles, questions, all of that. I mean, I thought that was such a great idea. And then the Sim Summits that we've been talking about, this is something that Avkin offers. So the Sim Summits are 1 to 2 days presentations. They are sponsored by Avkin, but it's actually Amy and I that come in as the speakers. We also have guest speakers, or if the place that we're partnered with wants to do a specific presentation, they're included in the agenda. But basically, we are seeing that a lot of state grants are funding this, or local nursing organizations are funding this because they're wanting this information. They're wanting the simulation information. So when you are doing a Sim Summit, you are actually partnered up with a events logistic person. She works with you every step of the way to get food, beverage, all the way down the line, just to make sure that this event is going to go off without a hitch. So, what's that word?
You said it right.
Hinge?
Hitch. Oh, you said, I thought you said
hitch.
I thought you said hitch.
Hold on. Yeah, I gotta restate that. Nate, you're gonna have such a time with editing this. So they're gonna work through just the marketing, the registration, and all of those different pieces that I think really intimidate everybody. But at this point now, we've been able to do this and just have such successful events where people are so excited, and the amount of positive feedback that the institutions get about this event, and they kind of get to sit back and take all of the credit because, again, it's their sim center. They get to show everything off, but so much of the work was done on the background that, again, they didn't have to be involved in all of the little details and, all of the logistical pieces with that.
Yeah. So again, it's a great opportunity if it's not something that you've done before and you want some assistance. Definitely, that's something that we are committed to helping the simulation community and giving back.
And when we started, I think that that's the most interesting. So when we started by doing workshops. So again, it was
no. We started by doing webinars in a closet, and nobody was there.
It's very sad.
So that's how we started.
I'd rather not talk.
Look, you talked about my shoes and my bags.
Skip right over it.
The closet.
Nah, skip over the closet. That was dark days. So beyond that, when we started getting out and doing things, we wanted to do workshops because we wanted to be able to get education about standardized patients out there. At the time, we were going to conferences and we'd say standardized patient and people just didn't even know what we were talking about. So we wanted to get more information out there about this is how you can start a program, this is how you can work with standardized patients.
Here's the benefits.
Yeah. And when we were traveling, I don't even know. I don't know what you want to say.
Every week. At least every week we were going to one workshop.
Living out of a suitcase, basically, at that point.
Pre-COVID.
And just getting the information out, just banging on that drum. And everything was free. We offered everything for free. We're hosting these. Just basically just trying to get people together. If you were some of those people that attended those workshops in the early days, I think that I'd love to hear what it was like from the perspective of the audience being there.
I think we did amazing.
I think we put on a great show, you know?
I think we did amazing.
But so much of it was just us figuring it out as we went, and we were doing so many. In the first 2 years, I think we did over 60.
It was every week, so there's 52 weeks in a year.
Yeah, so it must have been more than
take
that.
away Christmas, Thanksgiving, all of
and
that.
And summer. So I would say we probably were around 70. Yeah, we did so many. And then when COVID happened, obviously we had to shut everything down.
Thank God. We're tired of traveling.
But we didn't even know. I think that it was almost this insane almost like when the brakes come on too fast, it was like,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, it
So we
was.
moved over to webinars to get more information out there. But now that, you know, everyone's going back to in person and we can host these events now, we really wanted to change it because I feel like with the workshops, we were giving a lot of information in one day. It was almost overwhelming how much information was happening in that one day. And now being able to kind of spread it out, including a lot of different topics, including a lot of different things, I think we're just so much more sophisticated than we were.
Well, I think also there's a much bigger awareness about what standardized patients are.
Yes.
So we're not really having to start at the beginning as
Yeah,
much
it's
as
kind of like we
used
went under. The world
Yeah.
changed a lot, came back up again, you know?
Yes,
So
yes.
it definitely is. There's a completely different awareness. But what we're able to present on now, I think we just offer such a wide variety. But it's still that same mission that we had at the beginning, is just wanting to get the content out. I mean, again, that's why we do the podcast. That's why we do the webinars. That's why we do all of this in person, is it's just us wanting to get the content out there, because I think so often people are looking for these resources. They're looking for more information. They don't know where to go. And us just being able to kind of put this content out there, again, I hope that it just helps some new simulationists that are trying it out. But these sim summits are a great opportunity. If you're interested in attending one, we are doing one in Connecticut in October. You can visit avkin.com/events if you are looking for more information on dates and pricing for that. And then we are going to be continuing these into 2024. So if you're interested in hosting, again, reach out. We are more than happy to, you know, jump on a call, talk about it more. We do have some locations already identified for 2024 and moving in that direction. So if you're interested, let us know. Again, we'd be more than happy to talk more and look into that. And again, registration is open. So you can go to avkin.com/events for more information.
Yeah. And I just want to share in closing just like one kind of word of wisdom that a faculty member gave me. She was a very, very, very wise faculty member. But one of the things she said to me is, you know, when you're considering, you know, taking a step forward and doing something out of your comfort zone, she said you have to look at the ripple effect. And what she meant by that is, you know, when you're a bedside nurse, you're impacting one patient at a time. Your ripple is it's kind of small in that lake. Obviously very positive, but small. When you move into as an educator, your ripple becomes bigger because now you're affecting the nurses that are going to one day take care of patients. When you now are working with affecting the faculty members or the instructors that are going to be affecting the students, the ripple gets a little bit bigger. So though it may be a little bit more uncomfortable for you, it is broadening your area of influence or your area of being able to impact healthcare delivery for the better. So I hope that's a word of encouragement for you, but it just always, whenever I'm making a decision about the next thing, I think about that ripple effect and how is what I'm moving towards going to have a bigger impact on the people that I care about or the passions that I have.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. So our last question here that I want to ask you is, what is your favorite story from our 2 years of traveling I'm going to say the world, because we did go international as well, internationally during the workshops?
Favorite or most embarrassing?
I don't know.
Already,
I don't know.
You already shared with them about my shoes and my bags.
You act like it's like some deep dark secret. I think it's okay that you brought 12 pairs of shoes.
I think it's strange to bring 12 pairs of shoes to a 3 days event. I don't know.
It's
I mean,
okay.
I don't
Everyone
think normal
does it.
people do that. I would have to say the lunch story. So we were in South Carolina, and we usually got either Chick-fil-A or Panera Bread. And we were in South Carolina, University of South Carolina. Crystal, God love her.
Yeah, South Carolina University, right?
University of South Carolina, yeah. So we were down in South Carolina, and our administrative assistant at the time had ordered Chick-fil-A for us. You know, and we would go pick it up at lunchtime.
No, they delivered it. They would deliver it.
Oh, they typically, okay.
They would deliver it.
She knows more about that.
I did the logistics on the back end, guys.
And so we get to the point where
it's like an hour before lunch.
And nothing's been delivered. And we realize that
we're in between speaking sessions.
Well, no, it's actually lunchtime at this point. We just...
Oh, did we move it?
Yeah.
So I reach out to our admin who typically orders it, and she goes, "Oh no, I got an error message because they have a football game that day, and they're not going to be able to fulfill this order."
It was like an on-campus Chick-fil-A.
And she didn't realize, because again, we were doing so many events that she didn't realize. So we had to change around the day. So we changed around the schedule really fast. And then you look at me and say, "You're going to need to go get lunch for these 30 people in the next hour."
Yes.
"I'm going to go present. Good luck."
Yeah. So we changed our lunchtime from 12 to 1.
Mm-hmm.
You had 1 hour to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the other piece of this is I had dropped her off at the front of the building with the bags and parked the car. It was raining, and she had no idea where the car was parked, and we had a rental car. So she had to go through and hit the unlock button through the parking lot to find out where the car was.
To just figure out where the car was.
To find out
so
where
once
the car
we
was.
got through that, I figured I would just go to the closest Chick-fil-A. That happened to be the one we ordered from, and I didn't realize it. So then, first stop, no go. Next stop. I felt like a secret agent almost on a mission here, kind of going through this. So then, go to a Chick-fil-A that's maybe 10 minutes away, and they're in like full swing lunch rush. And I just remember going up and being like, "I need 15 sandwiches, 15 nugget meals."
No, it was 30.
Well, it was 15 of each. And so then I remember being like, "I can't do French fries. They're going to get cold. That's not going to work." So I remember being like,
we usually ordered mac and cheese.
I was like, "Do you have salad?" And they're like, "No," because it was the E. coli break thing. And they're like, "We don't have that." And I was like, "What else do you have?" And he said, "I think we can do chips." And I was like, "Great, do the chips." And then I said, "And I need one very large sweet tea right now." And he said, "Yes, ma'am, my pleasure."
And also a very large Coke Zero, because at the time
Did
I was
I get
drinking
that?
a lot of Coke Zero.
I was like, "Oh my gosh." And sat down at the table. They got it for me, and I think 20 minutes. And then I booked it back, got back right at the nick of time, set it out on the table. Yeah.
And we had lunch.
And then we had lunch, and nobody knew.
Well, I mean, we did have to switch the schedule around, but it was okay.
Okay, nobody knew. Nobody knew.
Nobody suffered as a result.
Everyone got
for sure.
some hot Chick-fil-A. That
was hot.
Delicious.
Too. For sure it was.
Oh gosh.
And what is your favorite story?
Oh man, that really threw me. I was not. I totally forgot about that.
How could you forget?
That one just left my realm of possibilities. I don't know. I think one of my favorite stories was, so we had done it a few times at this point where we had gone around, and this was I want to say number 15, number 20. I mean, again, we were not keeping track, but I want to say something like that.
We need to count that sometimes. So
I know, we really do need to look back. And I remember we were at the hotel that night, and I remember saying, "Hey, we really need to work on perfecting your story, like your intro story." And you're like, "Well, I say it different every time."
When I talk about kind of how we got Avkin started.
Yeah, how everything started in your background and everything like that. And you're like, "Well, I say it different every time." I was like, "No, you don't." And I was like, "Here, sit down." And I just remember going through and being like, "Hi, I'm Amy Cowperthwait. I started back in 2006.
That's exactly how she did it.
And saying it word for word. And I was like, "Pause for laughter here. Round of applause here." And then, like, going through the whole thing, and I just remember you were like, "I had no idea that that's what I did." And I was like, yeah, that is word for word what you do
and so
every
I said,
time.
From now on, you can introduce me.
Yeah, and then, like, now when you tell the stories, like, if you leave something out of the story, I'm always like, "You forgot this funny joke that you tell every time."
She did that when we just did the Achieving Radical
Change. We talked about it.
Yes, she just did that.
Because
like,
I feel like I can tell your story. Like, it's like memorized. It's ingrained. I feel like it's one of those things, like, if I was to go under anesthesia, like, I'd come out and be like, "I'm Amy Cowperthwait. I started in Simulationists in 2006. Like, it's just, like, it's so ingrained in who I am that, like, I can tell the trach story. I can tell, all of the CPR story. Like, again, it's just, like, and then it's the same jokes every time that I just...
It's not the same jokes.
Well,
don't listen to
okay,
her.
no, but they're good jokes. I just mean, like, they're, like, the part of the story. They're, like, the good laugh, pause at the story. So I just remember that being... I remember thinking that was really funny that you didn't realize that you had, like, a script. That you thought, like, you just, like, off the cuff every time. Yeah, just right off the dome.
Absolutely,
but
that's what I thought. That's so funny.
All right, guys, if you are interested in professional development at your institution, Please leave that in the comments. If you have ideas for presentations that you are interested in learning more about, we'd love to hear about it. I think that it's always nice to know what's timely and what's going on and what you guys want to hear about.
Or if you have great tips and tricks.
Yeah, or
leave
tips
them
and
in the
tricks for
comments.
your own events and professional development. We'd love to hear it. All right, we will see you next time on Simulation Nation.
Bye, everybody.